Hello, everybody. Welcome to the One Thing podcast. This is Jay Papasan, co author of the book, and your host today. We have a special episode we do every year this time where we focus on the goal setting retreat, and we have a very special guest in with us. And before I introduce her, I want to talk a little bit about the goal setting retreat. This will be the 18th year that my wife and I have done it, and the 7th year that we've facilitated it as a company. It's a really special event that helps people get clarity around their goals, where they're going, and why they need to go there so that they can actually plan for the next year. And we're going to dissect this, the benefits, and also learn lots of tips and tricks for how you can do it better. If at the end of this episode, you'd like to find out more about it, visit theonething.com and you'll find out everything about the actual live event in Austin, the live stream, and our remote team packages. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my friend and fellow goal setter, Jen Lewis. Welcome to the show, Jen.
Thank you, Jay. I'm so excited to be here.
I know it's so much fun. And you get to talk about the one thing you always jump at the chance. You've been such a
Ah,
great advocate for the book
yes.
and the process.
Because it's literally changed my life. So I have to always say thank you because it is one of those things that I never got exposed to in my previous life, to being surrounded by awesome humans like you. And it has really made things go in a different direction for my husband and I. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're going to dive deep into that. So, to go back in time, this whole tradition of the goal setting retreat, we can blame my wife, right? We can
Yeah.
give her credit. It was 2006. We had two kids under two. We were struggling a little bit as a couple. And my wife decided that we needed to get away from it all and just get to know each other a little bit better. We did not have any parents or grandparents in town. So that was a big deal for us in the beginning, just to hire an overnight babysitter. I think we paid a woman named PJ, I think, $100 for the night. We had no idea, like, what's the rate for an overnight babysitter because we'd never done it. And we got away, and I was a little nervous. I think you'll be identified with not knowing what you're getting into, but we spent the day just getting to know each other at a deeper level. And it was so powerful. We started talking about it like, wow, that was such a good investment of our time, that we started doing it. And then people started saying, can I have your questions? And then the questions started off as a Word document. And then it became multiple pages in a process. And then it was a Google Doc. I can remember the evolution of the doc. And then it became a PDF. And then eventually it became something that we facilitate with the One Thing Company. Now, for those who don't know, you left a career at IBM, jumped into real estate, and that's how we got to know each other.
That's right. That is how we got to know each other. I spent 13 years at IBM, and I actually got introduced to this before I met y'all and had no idea where it came from. But it was an experience, to say the least, in the beginning. In the beginning, for
So
sure.
walk us through that, the goal setting retreat. This came from your partner, JP Lewis, who's not
Yes.
here.
Yes. JP, having worked for KW for a long time and knowing you,
Mhm.
and
We grew up
he's,
together here, JP and
that's
I.
right. And he's very purposeful in his goal setting and always has been, I think, as part of the education and training he's received working alongside of amazing humans like you. And when you gave him your, wherever in the evolution it was, I think it was a spreadsheet at the time,
Okay.
a list of questions, he had started doing it on his own. And when we met, one of his key values or core values was that he wanted to make sure his partner wanted to do this with him. And I had no
No
idea.
pressure.
No pressure. I had no idea what it was. He just said, we're going to spend this time together and we're going to go do this thing where we ask each other all these questions and we get on the same page about where we want to go next. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. Next thing you know, I'm sitting in a restaurant in Austin, Texas, and we did a staycation because we didn't have that much money at the time either.
That's how we started as
And
well.
yeah, staycation. We did have family in town watching the kids, and or at least my daughter. My son didn't exist yet, and I frankly, I cried my little eyes out because it was so much more intense, if you will, than anything I'd ever experienced, and the intensity was just it was so many questions that no one had ever asked me before.
Right.
No one had ever cared enough. And in all transparency, I had been married once before, and it didn't go well, clearly, because I was with a new partner, and we weren't even married yet. And I'm running out of this restaurant crying, thinking, "What am I doing here?" And I went back in because I had to ask myself the questions like, "Why are we doing this? And what does it mean?" And it meant to me that, okay, he wants to spend time with me. He wants to understand more about me. And this is it's going to help us. Like, I just need to believe in the fact that it's going to help us. And that was the first year. Now it's the 15th year that we'll
I
be
just
doing
want to
this.
pause because I want to talk about the journey,
Okay.
but that first time,
Yeah.
because there's probably a lot of people listening that have heard about it. They're listening to this to find out a little bit more, and they might be going in for the first time. So when my wife said, I've got all these questions she collected from the internet back then, and I just want us to ask the questions and take time to find the answers. I felt like I was just in trouble. There was no other reason for this whole thing to happen. I was just in
You're in
trouble.
trouble.
And, it's kind of like, wait till you get home and we'll talk, your parents said, or something like that when you were a kid. There was some trauma there. So he's
Right.
like, we're going to get away and we're just going to talk, which kind of terrified me. And it was uncomfortable. We call those questions today the thought provoking questions. It sounds like for you, the first time they were just provoking.
They were very provoking,
Yes.
emotionally provoking.
But what we've come to find, and I think you can validate this or tell me your version of it, is that whether you're a married couple, like y'all were engaged, we were married, sometimes it's just thought-provoking questions you ask yourself, or maybe it's with a business partner. The point is we rarely make the space to ask the questions and thoughtfully find the answers. And some of them were uncomfortable. I remember one of the first questions, and we have two kids under two. And one of the first questions is, how do you feel about our intimate life? And like, what do you think the answer is for anybody that's got two kids for under two?
It
It's
feels so
not good.
judgy.
And we're going to talk about it. I
Right.
thought we were just supposed to be kind of like upset about it and angry at each other from time to time. No, we actually going to talk about it. But that space to have the conversations brings clarity and understanding.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, Jay, but I know we grew up in a similar generation. So, at least for my family, we don't talk about money. You don't talk about certain things. And so, having that as my background, having a question like intimacy was like, you want
if
me to
people
say this
if
out
people are
loud?
watching on YouTube, they could have just seen your
Yeah, my
expression.
face.
Yeah, I know, but I felt the same way. I was like, "What?"
And to also be transparent here, money felt the same way. It was just as personal and it felt so judgmental. Only because I had created that in my head from my experience with money, right? And I know we both really love the book, The Psychology of Money. And reading it now, I think about the way I behaved then. And it is because it's what my money stories were. And so the questions, as innocuous as they really are, because they're just questions on a piece of paper, when someone asks it of you and you've never been asked before, it feels very personal, very judgmental, very invasive. And that's the best way I could describe the feeling at the beginning. Was it felt invasive in a place I was not used to being asked about anything.
Well, it's a little unbalanced, at least for Wendy and I. And this is like JP's not here to defend the choice. God bless him for doing
I
it.
know.
Love JP. But like when Wendy and I did them, we did them together. So we both had to face the questions for probably the first time. Like she had collected them, but we didn't have time to do any homework. We barely had time to grab a nap when both kids were asleep, if they happened to fall asleep at the same time, right? Much less do thought provoking questions. It sounds like JP had done them on his own and then brought you in so that y'all could share their answers. And so, like, there's just a tip right there. Like, if you're doing this with a partner, either separate and both do your work solo and bring your answers back together, or do the work together.
Absolutely. And no intention on his
Of
part
course not.
to
It was
do
a
that.
first.
And yet, yeah. I mean, I talk about this all the time. Perception and intention don't always equal each other without asking the right questions. And his intention was to get to know me better. And I don't think I understood that was the goal. So that's probably the other part of this that I might spend more time on if you're the partner that really gets it and really wants to do this. And the other one is the tag along is the wrong word here, but drug along partner who isn't really as into it. I think getting really clear the intention of what the event is would have been helpful. And
Well,
I
y'all were
understand it
pioneers.
now.
Now we know
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
this in retrospect.
That's
What do
right.
you think is the intention for people considering it, or maybe they're early in the journey? What do you think is the outcome they should be expecting and the intention they should set going in?
That's a great question. I think the intention should be to be as vulnerable and transparent with each other as you can, because if you're going to be married, you've got to decide you're okay with being vulnerable with each other. And I didn't really think about it that way. I thought about it as it being questions that judged my answers versus my partner and I talking about, like, this is our chance to really be honest with each other, to
Right.
really just tell each other how we feel about money, about finances, about vacations, about intimacy, about being a couple and living our life together versus being two people that live lives in the same house.
So you just like, I've got lots of thoughts in my head. You've read The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham, and I don't know that it's in the book. I heard him say it at a class he was teaching, but he said, nothing changes until what's unspoken is said. And in partnerships, whether they be romantic or professional, if we don't find the space and the courage to say the things that haven't been said, it's like people don't have telepathy.
Right.
Right? We're sitting here judging them, but they don't actually know what we're judging them on. And so it provides a safe space for us to share those answers. And the other thing I think about, you talked about the drag along partner. And that's something I think about because a lot of the times that people come to our events as a partnership, whether that be romantic or professional, there's usually one person that's the goal setter. They're excited, their knees are bouncing, they're waiting for it to start. And the other person, it's like they're a prisoner, right? And we have to address both at the live and at the live stream versions because we realize they're both in the room. And it's our goal is that the drag along partner is just as enthusiastic by the end, right?
Yes.
But in a lot of partnerships, one person has a louder voice. Maybe they're more intuitive or a faster decision maker. Maybe they just like to negotiate harder. And if you only have one voice, call it one dot, you can always draw a line through it in any possible direction. But the moment you have two voices and you have two dots on the page, here's the thing, you can always draw a line between two dots. But now you actually have to get a ruler and make sure that they cross. And so a lot of people walk into a goal setting retreat and they think that they're going to find out that our dots are too far apart. That if
That's
we
scary.
reveal who we are and where we want to go, that we're actually revealing how far apart we are. And like now I'm going on 18 years of this, 25 years of marriage, thank God, still going. But the reality is real relationships evolve over time, right? You and JP. I want to go into y'all's journey on this whole thing. But you come in and out of being like super in sync. Like, let's go play pickleball this weekend together, or you go play pickleball with your friends and I'm going to read a book, whatever that is. You come in and out of that in sync. But if we're not talking about it, there's no way for us to draw the line to build the bridge. And that's the point of the event. That's to me the intention is if both of us get to put our wants and dreams and desires on the table, then the opportunity is presents itself for us to align them. And maybe this year we're going to lead with Jen's goals. And maybe next year we'll lead with JP's. Or maybe it's 2 years because that's the nature, but it allows for give and take because that drag along partner, that person maybe with the smaller voice finally gets to voice it. That's a lot of talking. So thank you for just nodding your head and going with
No,
me.
I 100% agree with what you just said, and I want to acknowledge to the drag along people listening that it is scary to think of
Yeah.
it that way. To think, especially having been divorced, to think about I'm going to now put my dot on a piece of paper. How far away is my about to be husband from that dot? Is it too far apart? That's super
That's
scary.
terrifying.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
And yet, at the same time, what you said is so impactful that the only way to build the bridge is to understand where the dots are. And that's it. You have to decide, I want this. I want this for long enough that I'm willing to go put my dot on a piece of paper and analyze where it is and decide that we're going to go on a journey to get ourselves closer and be bridge builders between each other and for our relationship and our kids.
I love that. So let's go back. The first one, you had to interrupt the dinner to keep it going.
Yeah.
Like there's a part of me wanted to know what specific question, but let's not go there. That's a bunny trail.
Uh,
Might have triggered that.
I could tell you. Part of it was the budget
Okay, so
conversation.
it was about money,
It
and you
was
said
about
that was
money.
triggering. Got it. And
Yes.
it is. We spend usually a lot of time breaking down money because it's the number one reason most couples fight. They haven't identified their money stories. They don't know how to safely have the conversations. And frankly, a lot of people bring a lot of shame to that conversation if they've got debt or a bankruptcy or something in their past.
Absolutely. And I
Okay.
did. I had debt and I had shame and I had a different money story than JP did. I
Yeah.
had all those things, and it was terrifying.
Y'all's money stories are hilariously different, knowing the two of you. Like, he
Yes,
was a house hacker. He was the thriftiest human being I think I've ever been around.
thriftiest.
I mean,
Yes.
I can think of one person that I've known my whole life that might
Oh.
have been thriftier, but JP was like the quintessential investor.
Hmm.
And you were the dress for success. I'm going to be an executive. And you just had a different focus. Like,
Yeah.
he's focused on cutting spending. You're like, I'm going to increase revenue, baby.
Right. Yeah. Why not? Like, isn't life all about living? I mean, come on.
Yes.
Living to me meant spending money and buying nice things and going on great vacations. And I think, honestly, Jay, that was part of the vulnerability that we got to in that first conversation was, why do I think the way I think about money? Why does he think the way he thinks about money? And helping each other really understand where we were starting from, and building our goals based on things that would excite me, but also excite him.
Yeah. You
Because we
found
get
that
excited
common
about different
ground
things.
and
Yeah,
y'all have become investors. Y'all have done so much.
we
Uh,
have.
so tell us about some of the leaps forward. Not only like y'all have been vulnerable,
Yeah.
y'all know so much more about each other. I mean, y'all have got from the outside, y'all have a great marriage and great kids.
Yeah.
So kudos to you both, because I
Thank
know it's
you.
a lot of work. What were some of the discoveries as y'all have done this? Because you came to two of our goal setting retreats, but y'all have done a lot of these on your own.
We have. This will be our 15th year to do it. We've been married for 14 years. And some of the biggest discoveries in the beginning were things like, well, why do you spend your money that way?
Right.
And getting JP to understand why I spent my money that way. Also, as a female versus a male, he's not going to go get his nails done. And he doesn't spend as much money on his hair. If you're not watching this on the video, I have a lot of hair and it is expensive. And so there were things that he didn't
At the same time,
understand.
I noticed that JP no longer wears like a digital watch. Like, he has a real
He
watch.
has a very nice watch now.
Yes.
He also wears designer jeans,
Woo!
and he has upped his game quite a bit. And it was a time on task over time thing.
Yeah.
It was there was no way I was going to change him in year one, and he wasn't going to change me either. So if I'm suggesting anything to folks who are doing this early on in their marriages or for the first time, it's understand this is not an opportunity for you to decide how to change each other.
Thank you for saying that. If I was going to go there, it's an opportunity for you to understand each other.
Right.
And what's funny is when I understand your choices and you understand mine, they start to maybe become more palatable where they used to be
Yes.
things I wouldn't have thought of before. Because
Yes.
now you understand through the lens of someone who you love that they're seeing it differently. And now you open up your own mindset.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said that better. And I think the other part of the journey was accepting his reasons for why he did or didn't want to spend money in certain ways, the same way he was being accepting of mine.
Right.
And that part of the journey, and also deciding where we both like to spend money. Like, we both enjoy spending money on experiences, on vacations and food. And so I knew if we were in a period of our lives and in our journey where we didn't have as much and we were really set on specific savings goals, that if I followed that path and I didn't spend all of my money on stuff, and instead I chose to spend my part of the budget on experiencing those things with my partner, then we were both going to have happy moments instead of, well, I'm just going to do it for me and you're just going to do it for you. We could bridge those gaps to
Yeah.
do things together that made us both happy.
And that's like I love that. I love it when I hear that people, whether it be an investment of money or time or resources, that they find the common ground where it brings joy to both parties.
Yeah.
Love that. And here's the thing, like, if you're thinking about doing this as an individual, I think a lot of people haven't asked themselves and listened to the answer of what do I want and why?
Yeah.
We define success for the one thing, like, it's a book about success. How are we defining it? So we wrote getting what you want. So what does
Whatever
that
that
mean?
is.
A lot of people don't know the answer.
Yeah.
They're just chasing the next thing and they don't really know. It feels like progress, but they don't know. And the beauty of this process that over time we brought the one thing too. It didn't start with the one thing, but we brought the one thing too is it helps people work backwards from their distant goals to what they want to do now.
Yes.
So I want to ask you one more question about your and JP's process. What's the coolest place y'all ever went to do your goal setting retreat? Because we talked about
Uh,
the staycation. We've done that. Like
yeah.
we've been on Priceline just trying to get out of the house and not going any place impressive. And we've also done some fun ones.
Yeah. I mean, we've gotten out of town. Funny enough, though, we actually did ACL one year at a hotel and the goal setting retreat. So we had to fit it all in. So that's my actual most memorable one. But we've left town. I think we did one in Chicago. I think we're going to do this one in California
We're
to,
looking at California too.
yeah,
Watch out.
I know, Monterey Beach.
We're
Like,
looking at
here we come.
Sonoma.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Sonoma is beautiful. And it's a great way to incentivize getting the work done. Honestly, at this point for us, it's we know what we're going in for, we know how long it's going to take us. So, in order to get through the process, we do the homework and we go right into it and we stick to our plan in order to get it done and enjoy wherever we are,
Yeah.
which I think is more helpful because kind of a bold law, right? That all work will fill the time allowed. If we just gave ourselves all day and didn't schedule how we did the goal setting retreat, we would spend all day on it. And then for me, I'm the one of the two of us that would just be exhausted by the end because
Right.
this wasn't my happy place to do the goal setting to begin with. It's JP's happy place. And so we found over several iterations of doing this that if we set a goal and a plan for how to get it done and we have something exciting to do on the other side of it, we will go do it within the plan.
Yeah, we operate pretty similarly. The first night, we usually treat ourselves to a dinner, whether we're away or at home, and we just kind of dream. We
Yeah.
don't have, well, we might have a phone out to take notes. Like, what are some vacations we've been kicking
Yes.
around? And we get excited. And the next day, like, even if we're in a really cool place, we kind of stay in the hotel room. And our
Yeah.
reward is if we can hit this much progress, then we'll go grab a fun lunch. And then we have this much progress. And we've got it pretty dialed in that with a little prep work on the front end, we can get 90% of the work done in one day. And then the rest is just reward. Because
Yeah.
we, like you, and it may not be the same for everyone, we like traveled experiences. And so that's the carrot we're dangling. If we can just focus and get to the finish line, then we can go do X, Y, or Z. So we've been
Absolutely.
talking for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. Someone might be going, well, tell me more about what it is.
Okay.
So when you think about the retreat and the work that we do, what, I mean, I'll walk people through it. What's your favorite part, or what do you think is the most important part?
Mm. I think the most important part is getting on the same page about not only the budget, where we're going to spend our money, but the why. You said this earlier, Jay, and I was someone who didn't really understand the purpose of budgeting because I didn't have a plan for what I was going to do with the money.
Right.
So what if we saved it? That was sort of my mentality because I didn't have some big dream about what we were going to spend the money on that we saved if we saved it.
If there's no someday goal, why am I saving it for someday?
Right. So getting really clear on that was the most impactful thing for us. And I can sit here and say 15 years later, number one, I would have laughed at our goals if you brought me all the way back to the first one, because he was thinking bigger than I was. And number two, we hit them all.
Yeah.
I don't even know how we would have ever done that had we not done this. So I think that someday goal was the most important thing for us to get right in the beginning. And we've continued to expand upon it, of course, over time. But that was it got me to want to do this with him because I understood why we were doing it.
I love that. And I love how like the through line for you has been about your money story and how it relates and the
Yes.
doors that when that story is healthy and in concert with JP's, it opens all kinds of opportunities.
All kinds.
And we don't have to explore what it was like before, but like
Yeah.
you can feel that that was important. So I love that. And thank you for being vulnerable and
Yeah.
sharing it. I think you talked about someday goals when you have something to plan for. I think a lot of people either they're into goal setting or they're not, but a lot of people experience this kind of groundhog day phenomenon where every year they maybe even do a retreat. They set big aspirations for the year, and then they look up January next year, and the same goals are there.
Yeah.
There's a stat, I think the sports company Strava measured everybody's activities at the beginning of the year, and they all these people that set goals in the Strava app. It's for like mountain bikers and racers, right? So they're
Yeah.
setting health goals there. And 80% of people who set goals had abandoned them by the second week of February.
Oh,
And they came up with a day, January 19th, they called it Quitter's Day because so many people abandoned their goals by the 19th. That was like, I'd call it the sweet spot, but it's the bitter spot, maybe.
yeah.
And I think the reason is people dream big, but then they go big. And the one thing we talk about giving yourself permission to dream really big, but then we have a process for working backwards from that
Right.
so that you kind of know what the next step is. And if you're trying to do everything at once, most people get frustrated and that's why they just give up, right? All
Yeah.
those health people, they're like, I'm going to get in great shape for swimsuit season. So they start a diet, they start an exercise program. You just do those two things. The diet means I have to shop differently, I have to prepare different foods in different proportions in different ways. The exercise means I have to go to bed early so I can get up early, and then I have to get ready to go to the gym. I have to learn how to, I mean, it's all of these tangled ideas that we underestimate versus, as we call it, going small. So I'm going to really quickly, if we had a little stopwatch, we'd click it on here. I'll just try to describe like the goal setting retreat in a nutshell. You've shared your favorite part. My favorite part is the process.
Mm.
We go and we start not even with someday goals, we start with the idea of purpose and core values. And that's about most people have never spent much time writing a mission statement. And you
Yeah.
shared, you guys have your core values on your goals. Is that right?
We do. Yes.
I
And
love
our
that.
mission statements.
And when you identify your goals and your core values together, right now you get to talk about them.
Yeah.
And so, like, I love the part where everybody does their core values. And then if you're there with a partner, you talk about that's why you do that thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This is one of my core
I
values.
love it.
And when people identify that, I kind of call it a compass. If you can set a goal that aligns with your core values, and if you've got a partner that aligns with theirs, now that's how you actually connect the dots. It's doing something fundamental for both of you, and you've identified how that works. Now we can set goals that actually matter and that not accomplishing them has a consequence. And then we just do the old goal setting to the now, which is we go way out in the future. We have them write a someday letter based on their core values, which, if you've never done that exercise, Jordan Freed does the best, I think. But like, there were not a lot of dry eyes in the room when you realize, like, basically 10 years from now, who am I hanging out with?
Yeah.
Who's no longer there? It forces you to think about your future in a very specific way. Then we
Yes.
get people to set goals on their someday. Based on their someday goals, which could be 10 plus years, you set 5 year goals. Then, based on your 5 year goals, you set 1 year goals. And you come out of your goal setting retreat with goals for the following year that are connected to your values, to each other's values, this vision of your life someday based on that, and then broken down. And when you break it down to 1 year and you follow that process, it's our hope and it's been our experience that people kind of know, well, here's what we have to do in January to kind of make that happen. Did I miss anything big? I'm trying to just do it from memory really quickly.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And I think the other piece that you talk about is in order to do that, you've got to actually spend time thinking about it after you
Yes.
do it, right? So but that's the way to break it down. Go from big down to what are the things I can do today, tomorrow, this week in order to get to that goal. And it helps to start make sense of every step that you're taking. I'm actually taking it in a specific direction that I want to go in instead of just letting life lead you
Yeah.
wherever it leads you.
Whatever looks attractive that week or
Right.
whatever. Now you know that the thing that you chose this week is somehow connected to this thing in the distant future. You actually reminded me, yeah, there's two other things. A lot of times we finish by asking the question, what are the habits we should be reinforcing or forming to
Yeah.
get us closer to our goals? If you think about the person you want to become someday, like, does that person go to the gym every day?
Yeah.
Does that person eat healthfully? Right? Does that
Hopefully.
person stop at one glass of wine or whatever that is?
Yeah.
And you can start thinking about building the kind of habits. And it's funny when you start behave like the person who has the things and the experiences that you want, those experiences and things come to you faster.
They do.
And the other one is the rhythm of success, right? So it's one thing to set goals, it's another thing to live them. So we do provide a framework for individuals and couples. Like, how do I check in? How do I know if I'm making progress? If I got out of the gate wrong, how do I reset? So we do provide some of those tools so that people know what to do after the event.
Yeah. Which is so important, and the other thing that I'd say to anyone starting this is don't beat yourself up if you miss a month or miss a week or you're off on your goals. It's Are we checking back in? Are we moving in the right direction? I think about the book, The Gap in the Gain. Like,
I love that book.
we have to remember what steps we took forward and celebrate them, even if we didn't get all the way there yet, especially in the beginning. That was the most helpful thing I think JP did for us was he celebrated all the wins, even when we weren't hitting all the goals that we had set. And yet becoming who we wanted to become now 15 years later, we're definitely on a path to something much greater than I think I ever saw myself as 15 years ago.
That's the beauty of it. I think we
Yeah,
underestimate how far we can go when we follow a simple process.
absolutely.
We just underestimate it. We thought none of those goals, we thought we'll try,
Yeah.
but we didn't believe in it. It took years for us to finally realize, like, we might actually get what we want.
We might, yeah, which
And
is
what
so
does that
great.
mean? It's kind
Yeah,
of cool.
it is so great. I think the only other lesson that I've learned, sadly, through the process because of things that happened that I wish I would have maybe thought about ahead of time is losing both of my parents along this journey taught me what the money was really for
Hmm.
versus sometimes I think we go into this planning and wanting things and why do we want to be net worth millionaires or multimillionaires or what's the money for? And I can think of all the happy, joyful things that it's for, but I also hope that everyone who's doing this thinks about the reasons that you do it to have real peace when the hard things happen.
Yeah.
And we got to experience a level of peace during those two tragic events in our world that I don't know we would have experienced had we not been in the place that we're at due to doing this every year with each other.
It forces you to ask the question about the people that matter most in your life based on where I think things are headed. What do I need to do now?
Right.
And if that clarity, we avoid a lot of regret. So that's a huge share to kind of wrap things up. So I'm just going to thank you, Jen, for being vulnerable and sharing your journey. Congrats to you and JP
Thank you.
for all the success you found. Y'all are 15 years.
Yeah.
Y'all are maybe some of our most veteran goal setting retreaters and for sure, one of our success stories. And I know that y'all have spread it far and wide. So thank you for doing that again
Yeah.
today. So for those of you that are listening, if you want to do this, we always provide resources, but you can also check out the event. We have a live stream. We even have remote packages if you lead a team and just want to host it with them. You can go to theonething.com with the number one and check it out. Whatever the case, I hope that you will make the choice to set aside time this year to think about why you want to go where you want to go, ultimately where that leads you, and then break it down so that you know what you need to do next year. I do think, just kind of like when the Keith Cunningham quote, nothing changes until what's unsaid is spoken.
Right.
I also think that until we sit down and think about where we want to go, we'll never know.
Yeah.
It's always just going to be the next thing. So this is your opportunity to get clarity. Jen, thanks for joining us. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
listeners, for joining us. We'll see you next week on the One Thing podcast.
Thanks, Jay.